All right. What's up, everybody? This is the Living Fully Loaded podcast. This is Logan Hanks. I've got an awesome guest today. He's with AmPax, and that's Mr. Bill Rapier. Bill, thank you for joining me, man.
Logan, thanks for having me on. Great to be here this morning.
It's an honor having you on the show. You've got a pretty wild story and a lifetime. I actually just put up an episode today called A Lifetime of Service of a previous podcast, and you fit that bill as well. How long were you in the SEAL teams?
So I was I was in the service for a little over 20 years and training towards being in the SEAL teams the whole time. I got to BUDS in 94. So I joined the service in 94, got to BUDS a couple months after, boot camp and Corpsman A school and all that stuff. So did not get my Trident until 96, I believe it was, either late 96 or early 97, somewhere around there. So technically I was a SEAL for about 17 years, 17 or 18 years, something like that. But training, part of the community for pretty much the whole time.
Yeah, that's a long time, man. That's a lot of time as a SEAL. Because I know several guys that were in for probably like 8 years, which doesn't diminish their role, but just 17 years, that's a long time as a SEAL. I appreciate your service, man. That's awesome.
Well, it was my privilege. It was a good time to be in.
Sure. Well, before we get into all that, I like to kind of warm up with some general questions. And so it's kind of giving people a taste of what's to come. So, all right, you got to give up one of three: burgers, pizza, or tacos. What are you giving up?
Tacos.
And that was an easy one for you.
Oh, I mean, I enjoy them all, but pizza would probably be the top. Burgers would be right after that. And if I got to give one up, tacos.
And that hurts my heart a little bit, man. I'm a tacos. I could eat tacos every day. But I understand. And pizza, I've talked to several people. Pizza is like it's the ultimate easy food. Like, if you just can't think of anything else, we'll just order a pizza or something. So that's a hard one there.
Ordering a pizza where we live is a little bit harder. I think I've successfully ordered pizza to our place once, and I had to bribe the driver because we're outside of the range. And so I had to basically assure him that I would make it worth his while to drive pizza all the way up to our place.
Now, where you live in? Is it Idaho? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, we're up in Idaho.
How far away are y'all from the nearest pizza?
It'll be about a 30, 40-minute drive, something like that.
Really?
If we wanted to, actually, a little bit, that would be the nearest one that actually delivers. A little bit closer than that if we wanted to go pick up.
Yeah. Dang.
But we normally make it ourselves. It's kind of a tradition that we have where, we actually grind our own flour and make the dough and make the whole pizza ourselves.
Dang, that's pretty cool.
And it's better than any other pizza you're going to buy.
I bet it is. I've never, I've done the where we buy the frozen pizzas and kind of doctor it up a little bit, like kind of cheat, start with like a tombstone pizza or something and put a little ground beef and stuff on there. But I've never ground my own flour and all that. So I mean, y'all do it all then.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And your kids, I guess they get involved because how many kids do you have?
I have 6 and another one on the way right now.
Hey man, congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you get them all involved in the process too?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I'm much more in a supervisory role now when it comes to pizza making. I normally just start saying, all right, you're doing dough and you're going to start frying up bacon and you're going to do sausage and you're going to cut up onions and mushrooms and hot peppers and everything else. So it's quite the operation now.
That is. That's what I have. I have 3-year-old twins. I got a boy-girl twins.
Okay.
And,
awesome.
Yeah, man, they're fun. They're getting to the really fun stage. Around 3 years old, they're starting to they can do things. And so we farm, and I'm like, I got to grow them up because that's my farm hand coming up. So I won't put them to work.
So we've really gone from, we talk about farming, uh, I would say the large percentage of the chores now, the farm chores, are done by our kiddos now, which is just been
Really?
awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's good for them, man. That's I mean, I grew up on a farm, and my family farmed, and um, you know, I'm not gonna say I never strayed the path along the way, but it kept me in line because I had to work. Like
Yeah.
when other people were kind of being rowdy over summer break or something from high school, I could go for a little while, but I wasn't getting too rowdy because I had to get up and work the next morning. So, it kept.
Summertime's haying season for us. So,
Yep, that's how we uh we began in cattle, and so we had cattle,
okay.
and then we would grow enough hay for our cows, and so yeah, it was always there was always work to be done. So it kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Yes.
So I think it's great for kids. All right, you got to watch one movie for 24 hours in a row. What do you watch it?
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Which one?
That would be harder. I'd probably pick one of the newer ones just because I haven't seen them as much.
What about, all right, this one got a lot of flack, and and maybe I might be ruining my movie cred here, but I enjoyed which one? Revenge of the Sith, where they bring in Darth Vader. It's kind of I guess when he becomes Darth Vader. Did you see that one?
Oh yeah.
Did you like it?
I enjoy them all. I mean, they've definitely there's a PC twist on a lot of them now.
Yeah.
But I enjoy them for what they are.
Well, that was me, and I love Darth Vader. I don't know. I always liked Vader, and so that one was really cool to me. And then now I'm seeing people are just like ragging on that movie, and so I'm like, man, I actually I liked it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So
I
do you
guess
watch
I'm not enough
Mandalorian?
of a Star Wars snob to dislike the movie.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not. I typically I used to not even enjoy Star Wars, and I kind of gave it more of a chance as I got older, and I like it now more. But now I did. There's a couple I didn't watch because I heard they were like super, like say politically correct or something like. So I had to guess I didn't even give those a chance. But I did watch The Mandalorian, and I enjoyed it. But then I see now they've gone, they fired that Gina Carano or whatever.
Yeah.
So what'd you think about that? Have you followed that very much?
Yeah, I mean a little bit. Kind of the internet lit itself on fire when that happened, and it sounds like she's getting a good deal out of it. Sounds like she's making a movie with one of those conservative.
Shapiro.
Yeah, with Shapiro.
Yeah.
So it sounds like she's going to come out ahead in the deal. I mean, I don't expect a whole lot out of Hollywood, quite honestly.
Yeah. That's pretty much where I'm at. I love movies, always been kind of a movie buff, but I don't hardly ever watch anything new anymore. I just kind of stick to the basics or the classics, I guess. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, then this one will be kind of tougher for you then with your thoughts on Hollywood. If they made a movie about your life, who would play you?
Oh man, I don't think I can even name an actor that's my age. So, and it's honestly, I put very little stock in actually following the personalities
Yeah.
involved in acting.
Yeah. No. And most of them are such like social justice warriors that you wouldn't even want them, like you wouldn't even enjoy them, like portraying
Yeah.
you on the screen.
Yeah,
That's
we were
funny.
talking. I was talking with a friend about Doolittle.
Yeah.
Great American hero, and the fact that Alex Baldwin played Doolittle.
Yeah.
Almost makes me not like Doolittle.
I know. Yeah. I can't stand him. Baldwin, that is. Him and Robert De Niro now rival like a spot for people that I can't stand in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which sucks, man, because Robert De Niro made some awesome movies.
Great actors, but I wish they would just leave, just stick to acting.
Yep, for sure. Awesome, man. Well, we'll think on that. Who could portray you? There's an
All
easy
right.
there's an easy one we could go with, and he's like the only guy that I really like very much in Hollywood right now, and that's Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Because you got the beard, yeah, he can kind of grow the little beard like that. He's probably, how old are you?
44.
44. You're probably he's around 40, I think. And he's not drinking the Kool-Aid, so I mean he would probably be a pretty good one. He's gonna be Jack Carr's book, the Terminal
That's what I was
List.
gonna say. That's why I know his name is associated with Jack Carr and that whole series, which I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, me too. That's I don't know. I had been kind of on a history kick, and then I got Jack came out, and actually I had the good fortune of having him on the podcast pretty early on, and it was right. I guess it was last year, right when Savage Son came out, and man, I love those books. Those books and even the audio books are really good of it.
Yeah, he's actually the first SEAL author that I have either read or listened to since I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't, I mean, it's kind of, I lived it, so I don't really want to see what the former teammates are talking about. But
yeah.
I've really enjoyed his book, so I would recommend to any of the listeners, anything written by Jack Carr is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is.
Start with Terminal List.
Yeah, well, and I like it because like in most books, the guys would be like he picks his pistol up off the counter or something. Jack's book would be like he grabs the Glock 19X, like with his
out of his Black Point tactical holster.
Yeah. He goes into like
it's awesome, loaded with
detail.
Black Hills honey badgers. I mean, it's very descriptive. Yeah,
it is, and I appreciate that because you could tell like, and this guy knows his stuff. Like he's not just some guy, like somebody being like the double barrel pump shotgun that he's got on his shoulder, like some ridiculous thing that's not true or something. So I appreciate Jack a lot. So awesome, man. Well, what books do you read? We kind of, before we get in, you said, are you much of a reader these days?
It's much more listening to. I listen to books. Reading is something that I do right when I want to go to sleep, and it is the best sleeping medicine out there for me right now. I read a page or two on my phone, and I'm out. So when listening to stuff, actually reading a book, the last book I read was a novel on a hypothetical future war in the Middle East with Israel and basically all the Muslim players involved, and I'm not even sure what the name of that was. What I would read every day would be the Bible, or I'm reading one of John MacArthur's books on leadership right now. He's solid for anyone listening. He's got some really good stuff. So that would be my normal daily reading, would be mostly the Bible. And then if I'm driving around, I'll listen to an audiobook.
Yeah.
Or a podcast or something.
Yeah. That's what we're doing, the Red Letter Challenge. Have you heard of that?
I've not.
It's we're doing kind of a church-wide study on it right now, and it's essentially a 40-day devotion, and it centers on like the red letters being what Jesus spoke in particular, and and I've enjoyed it. We're on like day 22 or 23, and it's been really good. But MacArthur's good. I got his commentary on Revelation, and it's solid. I like John MacArthur a lot. Yeah,
he's been a big blessing in my life. Just listening to, I went from, I used to listen to honestly mostly techno music when I'd be out running, and that's a lot of time to just listen to kind of mindless stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe 2 years ago or so, I started listening to sermons, and it's just been so good to just be, listening to God's word. As you're running, it's like you're getting so much more out of it than just running maybe a little bit faster. I probably do run a little bit faster if I'm listening to something with a beat to it, but it's definitely more value to listen to some preaching.
That would probably take your mind off of running more so than the music. because then you're actually really listening. I've noticed on like when I lift weights, most of the time I'll jam some like metal or something just to kind of get me in the
Yeah.
zone. But I was listening to a podcast the other day while lifting, and I actually kind of almost like I'm lifting weights, but it almost makes me forget that I'm even like what I'm doing because I'm so in the
Yeah.
zone on the podcast.
Well, that's good. I haven't been able to figure out how to do it when I'm doing strength stuff. I just feel like it's too distracting while I'm not distracted. I just end up missing too much of it while I'm working out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I will normally listen to some sort of music while I'm doing that, or a podcast or something that I'm just like, okay, I just want this on as background noise right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. I kind of called it. Now I've done that on audiobooks where I'll actually kind of zone out while lifting or something and then come back to it, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So then I have to rewind like a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So, if it's something I really want to pay attention to, I won't listen to it while I'm lifting.
Yeah. Yeah. So man, give us the rundown, man. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get started? I mean, take us back to the beginning.
So I was born in Oregon and didn't live there for very long. Moved to Southern California, early 2 or 3-ish, and we were there for a few years. And then we moved to Germany when I was 5. My parents were missionaries, so we lived in Bavaria for a few years, and then we moved and we were up in northern Germany for a few years. And then right before I turned 13, we moved back stateside. But we're San Jose area. We're down there for about 6 months or so. That was the first time I'd gone to an English speaking school, which was different.
Really? Now so you were like fluent in German by that point.
Yeah, I was basically a little German kid growing up.
Can you still speak it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
well, I learned how to read and write German before I did English. My parents dropped me off in a German kindergarten when I was 5, and I didn't speak a lick of German. And within a few months, I spoke better German than my parents did, who had been studying for years before going, to the missions field. So, yeah, it was, definitely interesting.
Was it hard to kind of relearn English? Did you have to kind of relearn that, or?
No, I didn't have to relearn English. I mean, we still spoke English sometimes at home.
Yeah.
It was more just, actually German makes a lot more sense the way it's written. Like, I know there's rules when reading English, but there's a lot of things where like the rules aren't very consistent. With German, it's very consistent. Like, if you understand the rules, you pretty much read out anything.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit challenging. But no, I mean, it was honestly I think the funnier thing was just I got to a point probably when I was 11 or so, and I realized that I'd lived in Germany for longer than I had in America.
Yeah.
And that bothered me because I really had this American identity, and all my friends were German. We'd speak German. Most of the time we'd speak German at home. I was thinking in German, like everything was going on in German. I just remember making it a conscious decision that I'm an American and I'm going to start thinking in English again, and I'm going to speak English at home. And kind of in retrospect, interesting, I think, that as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, whatever I was, I had that identity of, no, I'm an American. I think that really shaped me. They used to say about the British Commonwealths that the people that lived in the Commonwealth countries were more British than the British. Yeah. And I think in certain ways that's the same of expats, because you go overseas and you still have, or for some of us anyways, we still have that American identity, and you really fight hard to keep that.
Yeah. Well, and it probably makes you realize it like more so. I guess when you go and you are in a different culture, it kind of makes you probably think about it more. Like, here, it's just, we're in America, it's every day. I mean, that's all we know. But like when you go over and you're exposed to kind of that different culture, I would imagine it makes you think harder on it. Because like say at 10 or 11, that's just comical for me to think about you having that kind of thought, because when I was 10 or 11, I mean, I don't know what I was probably thinking about, like Hot Wheels cars or something. Like it wasn't, it wasn't anything about like my patriotic identity, I guess, which is cool because you've essentially had that patriot kind of mindset from a very young age.
Yeah, I think also, living overseas, and not, I'd say politics and the division within politics wasn't nearly as bad 30 years ago as it is today. But all that, I wasn't tracking on any of that. It was very much, oh, you're an American. Like we immediately have this connection. Hey, you're an American. I'm an American too. Like we're together on this.
Yeah.
And I think when you grow up stateside, there's a lot more like your tribe gets a lot smaller with just your own, the people that are in either your community or your church or your school or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, and now it's, it's crazy. Like right here in America, it's nuts right now, the divide. That's what, like, you can't be, I mean, and actually, me and you would be the worst because we are white Christian men. And that's like the worst thing you can be today. According to the woke culture. But I don't know. I kind of take pride in not being woke, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the whole social justice thing, I think is hugely. I mean, it goes hand in hand with socialism, and socialism goes hand in hand with communism, and it's hugely destructive towards our freedoms.
Yeah,
and people just aren't. They're not tracking on that. They're focusing on, hey, there's always going to be injustice. There's always going to be people that discriminate based off of the color of your skin or your hairstyle or the hat that you're wearing or the car that you drive or the way you speak. I mean, there's always, or the music that you listen to. I mean, you name it.
Yeah, anything.
As humans, we're pretty good about finding reasons to group together and to discriminate against other people. So you're always going to have that. That's just part of human nature. But if you make that such the focus that, hey, we can't even get anything done in the nation because of that, and then you do this whole culture of victimhood and, hey, you're not responsible for any of your circumstances in life. It's all because of these people from 200 years ago. And you're not doing those people any favors or anyone any favors by doing that, because you're just creating divisiveness. And, ultimately you have a country because people think along similar lines. And if we get to the point where we're not thinking along close enough lines anymore, we're going to fracture apart as a nation, and that would be, disappointing.
Yeah, I heard somebody talk about that, kind of how one thing as Americans, we used to always at least kind of, you'd have your left and your right side, but all of us ultimately wanted about the same thing. Like in the middle, everybody wanted freedom and that kind of stuff, but they were talking about how now, we actually have like socialist kind of thing being pushed into the country, and it's no longer a central mission with all of us. Like it's gotten so, I guess, radical on even and on both sides. I mean, it's just gotten so radical, and it's almost like the common ground is gone. And I don't know. It's weird to see that divide grow. So was Germany that way? I mean, I know you said it was 30 years ago, but would you see anything? Was their political climate like that in any way?
Germany's kind of an interesting, I would say they had much more radicalized stuff even back then. You had the skinhead faction, you had the green faction, and you had the red faction. As a nation, they're much, much more left than we are. Even their, quote unquote conservative are very, very left of center as we would look at it.
Jeez, that's scary.
Yeah, no kidding. So, but no, I mean, you would get some of the protests and some street fighting and whatnot. But I mean, Germany is just Yeah, they still have a lot of scars from World War II and a lot of cultural things that they've taken on post World War II, sins that they're kind of nationally trying to atone for.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so, all right. So you came back stateside. You said you were 13.
Yeah, I turned 13, I think, in the States, and went to it was the first time going to an English speaking school. So I went to Los Gatos Christian Junior High School in Los Gatos, California, right outside of San Jose. Did that for about half a year, and then moved to Swaziland in Southern Africa. So Swaziland's surrounded 3/4 by South Africa and 1/4 by Mozambique, and absolutely loved it there. Like, did not really want to move there when we left Germany. I wanted to stay stateside longer, but then got to Africa and just really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the people there. Just very, when you look at the farmers there, it's very rugged individualists, depending on themselves and their communities to get stuff done. And I really enjoyed that. Enjoyed the culture over there. Yeah, it was I enjoyed my time in Africa.
Now how long did you say you were stateside for? Only like 6 months?
Only like 6 or 7 months, something like that.
Dang. So yeah, you didn't get to be in the American way there for very long from Germany then.
Long enough to try and pick up some of the mannerisms that, the way English, the American kids my age were speaking. I was very like, oh, that is how Americans speak. And I would just copy them because I wanted to sound as American as possible.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. You had a breadbasket of culture there. So then Swaziland, I've never even heard of that. Now
it's a kingdom. At the time,
really?
It was the youngest monarch in the world, King Mswati III. He's got a bunch of wives, and it's a really interesting place.
It sounds like it. So what exactly were your parents doing? Were they teaching or building? What kind of stuff were they doing as missionaries when y'all went to Swaziland? What was their role?
So they were working for an organization called OC International, or that's what it was called at the time. And they would work with local pastors regionally and try to make them better at sharing the gospel and growing disciples within their own communities.
I got you. Okay. And so they would kind of, I guess, did they get basically selected? Did they pick where they went, or was it kind of a thing where it's like, we need people here?
No, well, I think a little bit of both. I think the organization did take on a little bit of, hey, we feel led towards this area, but also it was still kind of the model back then, which was overwhelmingly like, we send the American missionaries out and they go and do missionary stuff. And now it's much more, if we do send American missionaries out, it's to work specifically with local believers to empower them, so that we don't have the really older model of, the white missionary goes and builds a church and pastors it for 40 years and then retires back to the States or dies, and the church falls apart because they haven't grown the leadership properly. And so just trying to get away from that model. And I refer to it as the special forces model, where they're going in and they're force multipliers. They're sharing the gospel. They're developing believers into mature followers of Christ. And then those people go off and run their own churches and do their own outreach programs.
Yeah. Do you think any of that molded you to want to go SEALs? Did that play any part in that?
No, I honestly think I've wanted to be in the military since I was probably 5-ish years old. I think that's just how God made me. And I don't think it would have mattered where I was. I oscillated between wanting to be a pilot and, wanting to go to a service academy or whatever. But ultimately it was always, no, I wanted to do something in the military.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. I mean, that a lot of the guys that I've talked to, actually, it's kind of funny. You may know him. Terry Hewen?
Oh yeah, I know Terry.
He was just on the episode that I did, the one I just posted. And
okay, awesome.
Yeah, he awesome.
Yeah, we served
individual.
together for many years.
Well, that's what I heard you when I was listening to one with you and Andy. You mentioned the Chester Lynch stuff, and I was like, well, now Terry was in on that because we kind of touched on that. So I wondered if y'all had crossed paths in that sector there. And it's a community. I guess overall, is it a? Would you consider it a small community in the SEALs like that?
Yeah, it's a pretty small community. I mean,
Yeah.
generally you'll know guys, either you've worked with them or by reputation.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of, that was what I asked Terry, what kind of drove him towards the SEALs. And like he said, he kind of had a passion for it from a pretty young age. And so you hear that a lot, especially with SEALs. I feel like that's not something you just kind of stumble into. Now, when you joined, though, they were probably still relatively nowadays you see all kinds of stuff about SEALs, and back then they were probably still pretty unknown or untalked about, I guess.
Yeah, there was a lot less. I mean, that movie Navy SEALs had come out a couple years prior to me joining, so it was starting to get out, but it was still it wasn't even a fraction of what it is today, with with everyone knowing about it, and with even more books written about it. I mean, back then you had some stuff by Marcinko and Patches Watson, some of those guys, but it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah. So Charlie Sheen was your motivation. Is that what you're saying?
I will say, I watched that movie with my dad in Swaziland, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to come crashing through a glass ceiling with an MP5 and shoot people. That just looks awesome.
But that movie, now that was still that was kind of in some of the golden era of film, though, man. Like those movies it's still super enjoyable to watch. But so did you bust up anywhere and say, we're Navy SEALs? Did you give them the line when you went into a place like that?
No, it was always very I don't know, that movies was not on my mind anytime we had stuff going on.
I'm sure that's probably a good thing. Well, so all right. So while you were in Swaziland, I guess when you got done with there, when did y'all come back? When did you get back stateside from there?
90 or 91, something like that. We moved to Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And I should have gone in as a freshman, and but I'd been overseas for so long. They made me take an entrance test, and they said, no, you can hop right in as a sophomore. So I jumped right in as a sophomore, and then finished up the last 3 years of high school in Colorado.
Okay. And I guess as soon as you graduated, you went straight into the military?
The day after graduation.
Were your parents supportive? Were they cool with the military? Now, you had some family that was military, is that right?
Yeah, my dad had been active duty for a few years. I had various uncles and grandfathers and whatnot that had also been in the service. So I wouldn't say it was a very prominent tradition like you have in some families, where it's they're military brats growing up, and then they join as well. We didn't have that, but there was a history of it in our family.
Yeah. And so did you know for sure you wanted to be a SEAL? Was there any question, or is that something you knew going in, like at that point?
Oh, it's the only reason I joined the Navy. I really didn't want to join the Navy. Like, if I could have joined the Marine Corps and then gone to Buds afterwards, like, I would have much rather done that, just because I knew somewhat what I was getting myself into. Whereas if I don't make it through Buds, like, I'm either going to be Hayes Grain underway or with the Marine Corps as a corpsman, which that's honestly the reason why I picked corpsman as my source rating, or my source rating at the time. Was my backup plan. If I didn't make it through Buds, at least I could go and be with the grunts as a corpsman, or medic, for those that aren't familiar with that. That's the Navy calls medics corpsmen. Yeah.
So you did not want to be stuck on a ship?
I did not. No, I did 2 deployments on a ship as a SEAL, and really did not like being on the boat, and kind of, in retrospect, I can say I had a pretty bad attitude about it. Kind of, my, was a shoot, the first deployment, I was not even 21. I was, 19 or 20 years old. So you're just young, arrogant, and
Yeah.
like, why am I on a ship? I should be on, on land where we can train for war better. And, I would definitely have a different outlook if I was doing that now. I mean, I look at it as a huge wasted opportunity. I mean, I'm around people that generally like SEALs as long as you treat them nicely. And there, I mean, there's master machinists on board a ship. I mean, a ship has to be its own floating city. So
Yeah.
they need to be able to fabricate everything. You've got welders on there. You've got all sorts of things that it wasn't until 15 years later that I started looking at it and going, man, that's a deficiency in my overall ability. The fact that I can't weld.
Yeah.
The fact that I can't fabricate things, like, you should, as a man, you should be able to do that stuff. I mean, there's a massive list. One of Heinlein's quotes, and I'll butcher it, but basically he says that, a man should be able to lead an invasion, change a diaper, cook food, do like all these different things. And then he ends it with specialization is for insects. And yeah, that's just such I didn't get it until a lot later. Now I'm like, man, I want to learn everything about everything, because that's just, especially living on a farm, you got to be able to do that stuff. You got to be able to problem solve. You got to be able to fix things.
Yeah. It sounds like, I guess, I mean, I've never thought about that as far as on a ship like that, but you were essentially surrounded by people that were probably masters of their craft. That, like you said, was that something you could have learned? Were they willing to teach you? Like, let's say while you were on there, if you were like wanted to learn welding, could you have approached them and like,
oh yeah,
or is that
like, there's guys that did that. There was guys that were into whatever, I mean, some of it was, back then, each guy had a different source rating. So they might go spend time with their rate just so that they'd be able to pass the test for advancement easier. And generally the ship guys loved it. If you showed interest in what they do on a daily basis, and, we really didn't have jobs on the boat. I mean, we would jokingly say that SEAL stands for sleep, eat, and lift. And we tried to sleep as much. I mean, we joke about, if you sleep 12 hours a day, the deployment's only 3 months long. I mean, all sorts of, and guys tried to. I mean, we would try to sleep as much as possible, and we were all lifting as much as possible, and so you really didn't have anything going on. I mean, from time to time we'd have training, or we'd go off and work with some foreign military and train their guys, but there wasn't that much going on. So you absolutely could have taken the time to go down there and talk to those guys and say, hey man, teach me how this stuff works.
Yeah. I imagine that would be cool for them, because I mean, like say a SEAL coming down and being like, man, like showing interest in your craft would probably be pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, and anyone likes that. If you're a master at your craft and someone comes up and they show interest in it, like almost all of us are excited about that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy teaching, shooting and fighting so much now, is because I'm really into it. And so, especially when civilians come and train with me, well, they're taking time out to do that. They're not getting paid for it. In fact, they're having to pay to participate in this training, to get all the tools required for this training. So they're into it. So I really enjoy those guys have a passion for it. They want to learn, and I want to teach them.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I guess y'all were on a ship and all that during then, because it was a pretty peaceful time for when you first got in as a SEAL. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's some stuff up, there's some counter piracy stuff, like up in the Northern Arabian Gulf, some smuggling going on there. But yeah, for the most part, it was very, very, very benign times. In fact, I remember being horrified looking at some of the guys that were senior, 18, 20-year guys when I first checked in at SEAL Team 3, and they had never done anything for real. I just remember being terrified that, man, that could potentially be me 20 years from now, never having done anything for real.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't go. I feel like you don't join the SEALs to never deploy. Like I had a buddy that he joined the military, and I wrestled with it for a long time. I used to kind of trip me out talking about the books I had read. Chosen Warrior was one of them. Back when I was like 16, I was reading. It was Dick Couch. Is that his name? Have you heard of him?
I don't believe I have.
He wrote. I think that was it. He wrote several. Like it would be about Army Rangers, Green Berets. I think he wrote some on SEALs. I read Brave Men, Dark Waters. That was like one of the
Yeah, I remember reading that one.
that was one of the first ones, man, because I was like mesmerized by special forces when I was a kid. I mean, growing up, played in the woods and played paintball. I mean, that was like all I was into. And so I always was like thought, man, if I ever could join, I'd join special forces, do something along those lines. And I don't know, man. It's the books. They always like just made it seem awesome. So I mean, when I thought of joining, I was thinking of joining with the hopes of being deployed. I never joined, and I've said many times on the show I have a lot of regret. But I just, I farm and that's what I do. But I would want to deploy, but I had a good friend that he joined, and I remember, man, he got a call, and he joined like standard infantry, I think with the Army, and he got a call that he was going to be deployed, and he was deathly afraid. And I was like, dude, this is what you want, man. I'm like, why do you join to not deploy? Like, that's the whole point. And I mean, I think he was kind of more, wanted to join, but kind of for the schooling aspect, I guess for college and things like that, which I'm not, I don't.
I think that's one of the worst recruiting slogans ever. Is the whole money for college and more. I used to just, anytime we talk about it, I'm like, man, that's not the people that we want. Like, if you're joining because to get Uncle Sam to pay for college for you, like, go find another way. Like, we want guys that want to fight in the military.
Yeah, you want warriors.
100%. Well, you want, I guess initially, like, there's kind of a dichotomy there. Guys will talk about warriors and versus soldiers. Ultimately, you need to be a soldier first if you're going to be in the military. His soldiers historically have defeated warriors. I mean, look at the Romans, the Roman legions up in Gaul and Britannia and those places. They did get annihilated from time to time, but for the most part, they were beating, 5 to 10 to 1 odds of guys that were bigger and stronger and probably better warriors than the Roman soldier was. But the Roman soldier had discipline and fought as a unit, and they slaughtered people because of that. So
is that how you would describe a warrior versus a soldier? Would it be, how would you break that down?
So, or I guess to first off, to lay out what I would say is the ideal is first and foremost, you have to be a soldier. Because if you don't have to be a warrior, but you have to be a soldier to be in the military.
Yeah.
The warrior side of it would be someone that is passionate about it, that does it on their own time, that has that guy that is next level brave, next level on, is a true professional on all sides of things. And just, it's his life. That's what he wants to do. You can take a guy that doesn't really want to be there and you can make him a soldier. And as long as he can learn discipline, like, he can man the line and do the job.
Yeah.
But you need so we have to be soldiers first. And then the warrior aspect of it is the above and beyond. That's the guys that are stronger. Now, if you flip it and you just have a guy that's a warrior, well, he might be amazingly good, but if he wants to go out and choose, to go back a few 100 years, to go out and do individual battle, for personal glory instead of, hey, we fight as a unit, what good are you? I mean, the guys that go out and they're seeking individual glory over winning, I don't want those guys. So you could have some warriors that might be legit warriors, but if they can't get behind the discipline side of things, on the soldiering side of it, they end up being a liability.
Yeah. So like I'm thinking of the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae. Would that be would the Spartans be an example of a soldier and warrior? Because I mean, it was like
yeah, I would say both, because they started from boyhood in the agoge, and trained. They were absolutely professional soldiers, but then they also fought as a unit. I mean, this whole the whole whether it's legend or not, it's amazing. The ideas of the wife or the mother handing them their shield and say, come back with it or on it, because your shield protected the guy next to you. I mean, and the Spartans saying we don't need walls, like our men are our walls. I mean, some of that stuff is absolutely amazing. I would say that the epitome of being foolish and being a warrior is a story about Liver Eaton Johnson. And I again have no idea whether or not this is actually a true story or not, but this is how I heard it. So Liver Eaton Johnson, one of the mountain men, hated the Crow Indians, was captured by the Crow, taken back to their place. At some point, he kills the guy that's on guard, and then takes off running. And runs, and very shortly, like a bunch of braves sound the alarm and start chasing him as well. They're on foot. And so they run like all day. And then at a certain point, Liver Eaton Johnson's getting tired. So he turns around and he faces them to fight them. And these Indians, instead of just attacking and overwhelming them with numbers, they all stopped and they sang their death song and they attacked them one at a time. And that's how we know the story, because Liver Eaton Johnson beat them all. And I would just say that would be the height of valuing individual glory over your team or tribe or family winning.
Yeah. Like I say, that's crazy. I don't guess I've ever thought much about that story, but yeah. I mean, you could easily, I don't care how bad one man is, let's say 10 people surround him. The odds are pretty strongly against him. I mean, what do they say? I think they claim you can effectively fight off like 3 people, I've heard something, and it was like you can actually only get hit by, is it 3 people at one time? Have you heard that?
Well, you're somewhat missing and this gets into a little bit of how do we deal with multiple targets. That's how we would phrase, if I have to fight multiple guys, I think of it as I have a multiple target drill.
Yeah.
If what does everyone do? They will try and flank you.
Yeah.
Right. You'll have guys that get on. I mean, since the history of warfare, online and flank and throw projectiles is generally what people do. So I can't fight even 2 guys at the same time. If you're flanking me, how do you do that? It's not a it's not a high likelihood of winning. So a multiple target drill ends up being a huge thing where we're running to line guys up. So if you picture guys online moving towards you, well, if I stay where I'm at, I've got to fight multiple guys at once, which the odds of me losing increase significantly. If I flank and I sprint as fast as I can to the farthest outside guy, now for a beat, I have them all lined up.
Yeah.
Right. And they're going to be moving. So it's not this, it's not as clean as that. But basically, a multiple target drill is me constantly running to keep me fighting only one guy at a time. Because I can fight, 5 guys, one guy at a time, especially if you have tools. Right. Yeah. If it's not just, punches, whatever, you're hitting people with locks, on a troppo, or you're stabbing people, then all it takes is 1 or 2 shots and they're going to, get sleepy or be knocked out or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all stuff from training with SIOC has been how I've learned some of that, the multiple target drill like that. But it's huge to understand that, hey, doesn't matter how amazing you are, like you could get significantly lower level guys, and if we all have willingness we're going to close the distance, and one guy's going to go high, the other guy's going to go low, one guy's going to go for right arm, one guy's going to go for left arm, like it's really hard to win against that unless you enact that multiple target drill of always trying to flank, always trying to turn that corner and change it so that you're fighting one guy at a time. And then the other thing would be your chances of success go up significantly if you have tools, right?
Yeah.
If you think about doing this and actually wanting to be ready, there's no excuse for not having tools on you at all times.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree 100%. So then you don't want to John Wick it and just stand in one spot and try to take them all on. But I mean, if you're John Wick, you can do that.
Well, as long as they oblige you and only attack you one guy at a time, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, not to get on a side run here, but I love the movie The Patriot is one of my favorite movies. And I love that intro, or kind of the early on in the film. The British or whatever, when they take his son and he comes out with his two young boys, they're real young, and he pretty much just props them up on a log and is like, you shoot them, I'm going to run around. And, this is back when the British still would just do that, like stand in the open and like face shoot. And so, that's all he does is flank them the whole time. And I mean, he slaughters them. And I realize this is a movie, but like that kind of guerrilla style, I mean, it annihilated them. So, I mean, the flank, like you say, that makes a big difference because it was like literally 3 on 15 or something in that spot. But, so yeah. Well, now, all right. How long were you in peacetime? Because you were in when 9/11 happened, right?
I was. Yeah, I was actually sitting on the quarterdeck when I forget, I believe it was the first plane struck, and then I went upstairs to our team room and saw the second plane strike, and yeah, definitely big difference from peacetime military to now the longest continuous war that we've been in as a nation. Pretty crazy to think that. Remember one of our senior enlisted guys the next day in the gym saying, you guys aren't going anywhere. Like, this will all be wrapped up in a few weeks. And,
and here
he
we
couldn't
are.
have been more wrong about that.
Yeah. What do you think? Why is it still going on? What do you think?
Well, a couple different reasons. Number one, radical Islam is not compatible with Western, Judeo-Christian values. We don't have a problem with them generally. I mean, as within our society, it's like, hey, you do what you want to do. We don't really care. But you can't have that on the flip side of things, right? Try to move to Saudi Arabia and start a church. Like, they will string you up. They'll cut your head off for doing that. And so just that concept of, they want Islam to be across the world. I mean, within their ideology, they have Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam, and one is the land of peace or submission, which is any Islamic country, and everything else is the land of war, because it hasn't been submitted yet. And I mean, they want a worldwide caliphate, and we as a nation aren't serious in addressing that. When President Obama came out and said that ISIS was un-Islamic, I mean, that's one of the most crazy things I've ever heard. The whole reason they're fighting is for Islam. I mean, those guys have willingness to die for the cause of Allah. And to say that is not their motivator is, I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I mean, when we faced communism, in the late 40s all the way through the 90s, we at least took what they said at face value. They said they wanted to dominate the world, that, communism is the best system and they want to dominate the world. And we said, well, we need to have a plan to fight against that. And now we have the Islamists saying the same thing. And we're saying, no, that's not really what they believe, which is just crazy.
When they're saying,
so in part it's their doctrine, and in part of it, it's our lack of willingness to engage and just to accept. I think as Americans, we want the clean win. World War II, Germany and Japan, right? They've become our allies. They have phenomenal standards of living. They make cars and computers for us. We want that kind of a win in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we're just not going to get it. I think we need to take much more the long-term approach. I believe the Israelis call it the you got to go out and mow the grass. Just these guys are going to spring back up. We go out and we mow the grass. And, so if we truly want to win, we need to bring the gospel to these people. I mean, that's like, if you're talking actually winning, that's the only way. The missionaries that are doing that right now, like they're the ones that are fighting the important battles.
Yeah.
And not to take away from soldiers doing their part as well, because the longer we keep engaged over there, we are keeping the fight over there, because that's another thing within Islamic doctrine is you have to expel, they consider us the infidel. I always looked at they're the infidel. They have to expel us out of their land, the Dar al-Islam first. And then once we're out of there, then they can regroup and take the fight to us. So with us being over there by their duty, they have to fight us there first.
So do you think they would come on our soil there again if we were not over there, kind of, I guess, holding them, like keeping them down? Would that be a thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their willingness is very high. When we talk about the readiness formula, it stands on 3 legs. We have awareness at the top, willingness, and preparedness. Their awareness is okay. Their preparedness is horrible. Their willingness is very, very high. We're the opposite. We have great awareness. Well, usually we have decent awareness. Our preparedness is super high, right? We've got the best military on the planet. Our soldiers are first rate, but our willingness is very, very low. I mean, we have, people that are actively fighting against us, and instead of capturing them and saying, hey, you're fighting without a uniform on, historically, that has always been, you get lined up and shot. I mean, we did that to our own people during the Civil War. That was done during World War II. And it's not even a outside of the rules of war type of thing. It's if you're fighting without a uniform on or in the enemy's uniform, you just get summarily executed. And we've gone the opposite way of, hey, we're gonna bring these guys into a jail where they're gonna get fed better than they've ever eaten in their life. They're gonna get dental care, they're gonna get full medical, they get street cred among the other Muj, and then we'll release them a few months or a year or two later, and they just now they're legit guys within within the Muj. And now they go off and they continue.
What is the, like, I don't understand. I mean, one, like, I've never been in war, but I mean, war to me isn't something that you try to make clean and neat. Like, I feel like war, you go in and you do the job. Like, I talked to a guy, a good friend of mine that was in the Marines, and he was like, the way you got to do it with these people, he was like, the peaceful talking doesn't do anything with these people. Like, he was like, you got to go in and pretty much crush them with a hammer. Like, he was like, that's how you, like, I guess kind of like what you're saying, mow the grass. I mean, trying to be nice and talk to them. And that's part of the problem, I think, with the media kind of getting involved. And I kind of want to politicize military, because you got a ton of people that don't know anything about the military that are saying that they shouldn't be doing certain things. Like, and that's a huge problem to me. Like, I feel like they're,
and I mean, some of that problem stems from the senior people within the service not having actually been on the ground and done things like that. And when you don't have an understanding of, well, it's actually can be challenging to make complex decisions, under pressure with people shooting at you, one guy shooting at you and then someone else runs out. Like, I mean, some of the ROEs that US troops have had to abide by are insane. I mean, literally, like, guys will be shooting from behind, a covered position, and they'll just leave their weapons there, and they'll, stick their hands out and walk to another position of cover, no weapon, and they can't be engaged. And it's like, this is insanity. If you're actively involved in the fight, you're an enemy combatant, and you should be engaged, and treated accordingly.
And that's causing more. I mean, that's causing more damage to our guys than anything. Like you said, a guy. And so they've learned even how to manipulate us in that way over there then?
Absolutely. They've learned to manipulate our own rules of engagement against us. And then also the things that we, they know that we place value on life. They really don't place value on human life the same way that we do.
Yeah.
And so for them to, to send, suicide bombers out, or to even, let their own people be killed just, to win the IO, the Information Operations Campaign, like they're fine with that. And then they know that if there's any women or kids killed, they know that that's like a big hot button for us. So if there's, it might have been completely their fault. Doesn't matter if there's, after some sort of a raid, there's a dead woman or a kid, which is, we're never trying to do that, but I mean, it is warfare, and you're shooting bullets and blowing stuff up and dropping bombs. Like, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But they'll then go and take that and parade it. And I mean, I don't know how many times I saw like operations across the whole country shut down because, of a single civilian casualty incident. And they'll shut everything down. And so, I mean, our enemies are smart. They recognize, well, hey, this is a huge weakness that they have. So all we have to do is parade, or, anytime something happens, we just have to go to our, their version of a congressman and lobby and say, this is, innocent people were killed. Never mind that innocent people were married to Mooj, that were building IEDs, that were killing American soldiers. Like, but they're, by nature of them being a woman or a child, they're, innocent. Instead of going, well, hey, you have some culpability. If you're fighting, like, you have some culpability in the things that you're going to bring towards your family if you do that.
Do you think you'll see a shift in the military, because we've been engaged for so long that I feel like, I would imagine a lot of the guys that will soon be the senior guys have probably been in warfare. Do you think you'll see that shift, or do you think politics has gotten so strong that, I don't know?
It will be interesting to see. I mean, a lot of guys don't have the stomach to do the politics.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of not all of them, there are some good officers that are out there, but a lot of the senior officers, they reach a certain point, and what they care about more than anything else is pleasing their superior. And that's not right. It should be, first and foremost, uphold the Constitution and do what's right for your guys, accomplish the mission. Not, obviously right now there's, if you saw that thing when Tucker Carlson just talked about the Chinese are trying to masculinize their men, especially their fighting force more. And, President Biden comes out and he's talking about how many, women he's gotten in place, and how there's now pregnancy flight suits. Like, that's, and then right, so he comes out and talks about that. And then you have all these senior enlisted and then general officers chiming in and saying, Tucker doesn't know what he's talking about. When, look at who actually did a study when, it was 5-6 years ago, when they said, hey, you guys are going to integrate women into combat roles. The Marine Corps, phenomenal organization. When they're ordered to do something, they very much do it. I would say some of the other organizations, maybe they're trying to push agendas one way or another. And the Marine Corps actually did it. They did 2 simultaneous workups, one, for a deployment, one with a integrated, male and female unit, and one with just the male unit. And the evidence was, spoke for itself. I mean, they said that the integrated units did not shoot as well, did not move as fast, and were more prone to injury.
Yeah.
And then immediately, like, as soon as that was pushed up the chain, it was, that's a sexist study, and like the numbers weren't done right, and it was biased. And it's like, there's some human. I mean, the Army's going through this right now. They tried doing a gender neutral PT test, and all the women, or overwhelming majority of the women, are failing the PT test. So now they're looking at, well, now we have to go back to some sort of, different standards, because, God made us different. Like, men are inherently stronger. Like, we have more muscle mass, we have more bone density. It's not one is better than the other. But if you're talking about just fighting and breaking things, one is better than another.
Yeah.
You know, one is designed to do that. The other is not designed to do that.
Yeah. And where that frustrates me, that's not saying men are superior to women. Like that in no way is, but we are just different. There's things women, like my wife is much better at quite a few things than I am. But like
100%.
If there was a wall that needed to have a sledgehammer put through it to tear it down, I'm more equipped for that job. But like, and that's what I've thought about this with women in combat. And I have no problem with it if they meet the same standards. Like that's where it becomes a problem to me, is when you hear of them lowering the standards. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I would actually differ with you there. I don't think it's a good idea across the board. And mostly just because of the dynamics that happens and the percentage of, you know, there are some women out there that are strong and that, you know, that could meet the standard, but they are so few and far between. And when you look at any time you have men and women together, it completely changes the dynamic of the interaction that's going on. I mean, and that's just, it's human nature. You can try and deny it, but I've seen it many, many times. As soon as, you know, guys act differently when it's just guys, and as soon as there's girls in the room, especially when they're attractive girls and we've got single guys, like the guys will start behaving differently. And you can say, well, no, that doesn't happen, but yes, it does happen.
I mean, that's
across the board. It's human nature. And so I would be against it just because of that. I mean, if you look at that, you know, instances where women have fought, I mean, we had women fight in, you know, on the frontier, right? When your camp was attacked by the Indians and there was women there, they were helping fight. But when settlers were kidnapped by the Indians, you didn't pick women to go retrieve, you know, the people that were kidnapped. You picked the strongest, fastest, best guys to go do that. So I'm good with them fighting if it's, you know, if that's all you got. I mean, you know, my wife trains somewhat. You know, if we're out and we get in a fight, like, you know, I am expected to do the brunt of the work, but like I might lose if she's not helping me, or if my children aren't helping me for that matter as well. So it's like, they should, in a situation like that, absolutely, they should have capability to help as, you know, they have ability to. But to say, hey, and then what does that say about us as a nation? That we're going to send our the people that should be most precious to us, our wives and our daughters, and we're going to allow them to be drafted and, you know, and sent downrange. Man, it does not sit well with me at all.
Yeah, that speaks poorly of our men. Like, that's like saying
I agree.
It's basically like saying that we don't have men to step up. And so, we got to put them there. And I hear you too, what you're saying, because like, I guess I could almost picture as a man, if you would almost feel that sense to protect we just feel the sense to protect the women. I mean, that's just natural. So I mean, I don't know, I could see that, but it really irks me when I hear of them like messing with the standards, because I mean, like if something happens, and I think it was Tim Kennedy or somebody I heard talk about it, but he was like, if I get shot, I think he said when he was fully geared up, he weighed like close to 300 pounds or something with his ammo and all that. But he's 200 and something pound guy. And he was like, can a woman drag me like out of the line of fire or something if something happens? And, I mean, like I said, there are some that probably physically could, but that's probably a pretty small percentage.
Very, very rare. I mean, we had to take some women with us on target, and they were patriots. They were very professional. They were selected from the entire military for, specifically for their fitness. And so one of the ones I remember, like, she had a double body weight deadlift. I don't have a double body weight deadlift. Like that's pretty good right there.
Yeah.
Her double body weight deadlift did not move. My loaded helo weight was normally somewhere in the high 270s to low 280s.
Yeah.
Her double body weight deadlift was like, I think she was $110. So she was pulling like 220 or 225, something like that. So she doesn't even move me with my kit on.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, she's, top 1 percentile among women, but it's still like there's a certain level of strength that is required to do the job. And,
Yeah.
if you don't have that just inherently, then I'm sorry, but this is not, the military is not about it's not a social welfare program. It's not where we experiment with what works. The purpose of the military is to impose US policy, either defensively or offensively somewhere, across the globe. I mean, that is the purpose of it. Anything, and we're just getting away from that. I mean, everything within the military should be, all the decisions should be couched or framed under that. Hey, does this make us stronger as a fighting force or weaker as a fighting force? And I feel some of the current leadership, some of the senior enlisted and general officers that are saying, well, we're stronger as a nation by having women in infantry units, they're being disingenuous.
Yeah.
Because it's just not true.
Yeah, and that's it's unfortunate to me that it's made it to that level, like that high of a level, I guess, with them, because like you said, I think some people are trying to look at the military as a place to do like these social justice experiments. And I mean, man, like you're even seeing, I've seen where like I think they'll even pay for people to have a sex change and stuff like that, and it's like,
yes,
man, I'll be honest. I mean, I wasn't in the military, but I feel like I wouldn't want like the dude watching my back to be like a gender dysphoric person. They don't even know if they're a man or a woman. Like I would kind of have mixed feelings about them being the one watching my back. I mean, because I don't
hugely.
know.
And none of the guys are going to respect guys that are doing that. Really, none of the guys that are the war fighters. The guys that are actually going and fighting, they're not going to respect the people that are doing that. If you thinking that you are, part of the opposite sex, if that's the most important thing to you, which obviously it is, if that's what you're going to do, like go do that on your own time.
Yeah.
Because you're a distraction now within your unit, within the command. Most of those guys are not on deployable status because they're, either awaiting surgery or they have to take some regime of drugs to balance their hormones the way they want them to be balanced. So it's just, it's not practical. Like, again, how does someone joining the military that is confused about their gender, how does that make the United States military stronger?
Yeah. That's what
the answer is. It doesn't.
Yeah. No way. And all that just detracts to me. But so now after 9/11, I mean, now the way y'all train and everything, did it take a big change after 9/11? Because still, I guess, were y'all deployed kind of in a different way before 9/11?
Well, I mean, the military is constantly deploying to different places, during war and peacetime. We ramped up some of our training. We specialized some of our training for what we thought that the fight would look like. But honestly, we were training like maniacs before. Like I wouldn't say that we started training any harder. We just were more focused on, okay, we're probably going to be at high altitude in the mountains of Afghanistan somewhere.
Yeah.
So we kind of shifted more towards that focus. But like the tempo of how much the guys trained pre-war was very, very high.
Yeah. Now that when you went overseas, man, what was that like? I mean, what's it like as a SEAL over in Afghanistan? What kind of stuff are y'all doing?
I mean, day to day, I mean, you're basically you're ready to go do hits whenever. Generally, you kind of fall into a pattern, and whether that's a daytime routine or a nighttime routine, it just kind of depends on what mission you're trying to fulfill. But I mean, it's just like going hunting. I mean, you wake up, you you eat some food, and you go look, hey, what's on the docket for today? What targets can we service? Which ones are still under development? And then you try, you see if your triggers are met to go service the target for that night. And if they are, you go hunting. And if they're not, you go, you reach a time frame when, hey, we're not going to make this anymore, because we looked through all the, well, how long is it going to take us to fly there? How long are actions on the objective going to take? How long is it going to take to get back? And we want to be back by a certain time. So you reach a certain point and you're like, well, even if the trigger is met right now, like risk to force increases too much. So we're just not we won't service the target tonight. We'll hit it the next day. So generally when you would hit that time frame, most of us would just go work out, because you're like, we know that, hey, we're not going to do that now. So we'd go, hit the gym, get whatever fitness in that we're going to, maybe do some grappling, or, maybe go shoot, do something productive, and then just kind of chill and read or watch movies, or, some guys were into playing video games, which I always, not being a gamer, I always thought was just amazing how guys would come off of real world missions sometimes and come home and go play Halo right away. But the guys loved it. I mean, in some ways I was jealous of it at times, because it was such a time suck for the guys that, and when you're downrange, like you want the time to go by faster, but I could never get into it.
Yeah. Well, that's now when you would go out, man, did you ever have many moments? I mean, because obviously doing what you did is I would say insanely dangerous. Did you have any moments where you thought, like, I'm probably not getting out of here?
There were some times where, not necessarily, generally not in the middle of stuff. It was more, being nervous, or, just being scared prior to going in, when you still have time to think about, okay, man, this looks super sketchy doing this. It's generally that, like, once you land, it's just, hey, you got work to do, and then you go do it. So there was a lot less of it. I would say, on the ramp of the helos, still sometimes nervous if you have enough time to think about it, but then when you start getting close and you're like, all right, now I got to look, I got to start checking my GPS, make sure that, that the pilots are putting us down where we wanted them to put us down, like all that stuff. Once you're working, and you don't think about it as much, or you don't think, or I really wasn't thinking about, being nervous or scared at all at that point.
Yeah. I guess you turn on at that point. That's when your training just turns on, and you pretty much go into that mode.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you had enough time to sit there and think about it, you might still be scared or nervous, however you want to term it. But it's, once you're on the ground, you got work to do. And so it's not, you're doing work, and if you're doing work and you're thinking about all these other things, you're not doing work properly. So it's just, it's kind of being able to go compartmentalize, kind of single-mindedness, and go.
Yeah. And y'all said something that kind of surprised me on that episode with Andy. He said that a lot of the guys probably were not believers. That kind of surprised me. I figured that it would be more, I don't know why, but I figured more people would have been, I guess, had faith in that role, because, I've heard the old saying where they say there's no atheist in foxholes kind of thing.
No atheist in a foxhole. Yeah.
So that kind of,
and the guys definitely at various times would be more open to it, I would say, especially as, deployments where it was more, where there was more on the line, and, we're getting in gunfights on a regular basis. Like there's, I would say, more receptiveness to it. I mean, some of the cool memories I have, we had a Southern Baptist chaplain, man, he would, for on one or two of our deployments, like we would get together before pre-mission, and he would pray, and man, it was just awesome. And like everyone would go, even when we'd have, some of the Muslims that were that had to come with us, like they would be in there with, and it was just it was a pretty cool time. So I there is a time where guys are more receptive to it.
Yeah. I I just would kind of thought like in a role where you essentially do face death pretty often. I don't know, man. The kind of the end of the line there, like where do I go from here would probably be something I would think about a lot.
I agree. And I mean, that's something I talk about now every time I do a class and we do a mindset talk, that's part of, we talk about death. You might do everything right, tactically and, combatively, you might do everything right and you might still lose.
Yeah.
And so we need to be ready for death and a good death. And the only way you're going to have a good death is if you're right with God, which the only way we get right with God is through his son, Christ, by accepting, what he did on the cross for our sins. We can have assurance of salvation if we turn to him and count not on our own righteousness, but on his. It's so comforting as a believer to know, man, I have assurance of salvation. I know where I'm going to go.
Yeah,
not because of anything I've done, but because of what Christ did on the cross for me.
Yeah.
And
no. Well, like I say, being an actual like war fighter there, especially like that would just, it's on my mind as a civilian. So I would just imagine there, which, do you think that having faith, do you think it helped you? Do you think it helped you? Like, I don't know, like you had that assurance at the end of like, if this goes south, you know where you're going. Do you think that gave you maybe a little hint of comfort or what?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Hugely comforting, huge confidence thing for me. I've got good friends that are not Christians that, manned up every time and did the job. But I would always look at it and go, man, that's like that. Yeah. I'm just kind of shaking my head like, man, like you need to get right with God because it's but it goes to the pervasiveness of people just not believing, that there is an absolute right and wrong, that there are absolutes.
Yeah.
Or at least when it comes to death, people kind of thinking, well, it's just energy and like I can believe whatever I want to and that will happen. And it's just in nothing else is it like that, right? If I think gravity doesn't exist and I jump off my roof, I'm going to find out in about half a second that it does exist, when there's some consequences for not believing that. So what I always try and leave guys with is just say, hey man, look at what did Jesus say about himself and what did other people say about him? And, just looking at the disciples, like what did they do when Christ was crucified? What did Peter do? Within, a few hours before, he's like, I'm ready to die with you. And then a few hours later, he runs away and then kind of sneaks back and denies Christ 3 times.
Yeah.
And then they see Christ crucified and they're all sad. And, they're like, man, we thought he was the one, we thought he was the Messiah.
Yeah.
And so what changes for those guys? Like, how does Peter go from denying Christ 3 times to church tradition tells us that Peter was crucified upside down. They were going to crucify him. He said, no, I'm not worthy to die the same way that my Lord died. Put me upside down. And they supposedly honored it. How does a guy go from running away and denying him 3 times to to dying for that? I believe 10 of the remaining 11 original disciples were martyred for their faith. Yeah. If you and I are going to make up a story, like we might make up a story and keep it for a while, but if they start torturing our families to death, exactly. Like as soon as they're like, we're going to start pulling, your limbs off or your children's limbs off. Okay. Now we were just joking on that one, right? None of those guys did that. They all went to their death off for something that they saw, which is the big difference between, guys will say, well, there's martyrs within Islam and every day, there's Muslims that die for their faith, but they're dying for a lie that they've been told, right? The early Christians died for something that they actually saw. And there's a massive, massive difference right there. And so that's why I always try and just encourage you guys is look at what did Jesus say about himself? And what did the other people say about him afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that was one of the, I went to a little small private school when I went to high school. And so, I mean, I was always pretty much around just other Christians and grew up in church. And so I actually was a machinist for a few years before I came back. I left the farm, went and became a machinist, and then came back to farming. And I worked with an atheist, a hardcore atheist, man. Like this dude was like one of those that's really in your face about being an atheist. And it was wild to me because he was a former Marine and he had been on night shift. So I didn't really know him because I was on days. And he had these like spots on his arm and on one side of his face. And it was just like these little dark specks. And so he came to day shift and we became good friends. But he had been blown up. He was a corporal, I think, at the time, he told me, and he picked up, they had already detonated an IED. And he said they went, and when they came back, he went down in there, picked the IED up out of there, and they had reset an IED below that one or something.
Wow.
And he said that when he did that, it blew him out of the hole and like blew him across. He said he went flying and he was like, when he came to, he said that his eyes were swelled shut and it had split his lips like in half on the top and the bottom. And he said he started crawling and he said he was dragging something. He thought it was his guts. And he said he felt and it had blown his vest in half and he was dragging his vest. And he like went to feel of his chest and everything and his finger had been blown off because he said he touched and was like, ow, like that hurts. So he was like, my finger was blown off. But all this, man, he survives all this stuff. His finger actually, he said he had on some Oakley gloves and some shrapnel went through his knuckle, but the gloves held on the side. So it held the end of his finger in the glove. So they actually put his finger back on. He said he had to go, he told me the physical therapy he went through just to learn how to like pull a trigger again was like crazy how much he had to go through.
Yeah.
But through all of this, man, didn't lose any limbs. He just had like I said, some scars on his arm and on one side of his face. You would never know this guy got blown up. And he was a freaking huge atheist. And I always was like, how are you an atheist, man? Like, and he even said his mom gave him a little cross to wear. And he was like, I don't want to wear this cross. And she was like, just wear it. And she like begged him. So he said he did. And he said when he was in the hospital in Germany, there was something taped to his leg and they were like, what is this? He said, I don't know. And so he said they opened it and it was the cross and it was like dented up from shrapnel, but it was still intact. And he said he gave it to his mom afterwards. He was like, she wouldn't take like $1 million for that cross. But I'm like, how are you an atheist, man? Like that just blew my mind. Like he thinks on his own strength that he survived that, but like there's no way. So I don't know.
I mean, it's coming. It ultimately it is faith, but the Holy Spirit has to move in people to open their eyes to accepting the gospel. It's not something that on our own accord we're not capable of doing that. So pray for them.
Yep. Now, was there any one operation that stood out to you as like the most rewarding one you've ever been a part of?
There's been a bunch of things that were cool, kind of all in their own right. Whether it was the Jessica Lynch thing was pretty cool. I mean, just the way that whole thing spun up, we saw it that it happened, and we flew out and pre-staged, and like the intel was actually coming together, which a lot of times it doesn't. And then we flew out and hit it and got her. I mean, it was pretty amazing, and we actually had her out on a helo before the ground assault force even got there, which is pretty awesome. Like it was pretty fast from the time we landed. I think I was on the second little bird going in. It was not what we expected. we expected. I mean, the Saddam Fedayeen had been using the hospital as a headquarters up until who knows how recently, probably within hours.
Yeah.
Because they still had full sand tables of the whole area in the basement. So, I mean, we were expecting it to be a big bloody fight, and it wasn't at all.
Yeah.
Guys got shot at on the way in, but it wasn't this big, shooting bad guys in the hallways. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, like because the Marines had taken pretty heavy casualties there on Nasiriyah, and so they were holed up, and then when like a minute out, I think, or 2 minutes out from when we landed, like all coalition forces did like a mad minute, and so we're flying in while this is going on. It's just like tracer fire going everywhere. It was pretty awesome. Like, anytime I think any of the bigger operations that we've been a part of, where there's just tons and tons of support aircraft and so many different moving parts, like it ends up being pretty amazing to think about that, man. Like, I get to be a part of this. Like, I'm like one tiny little cog in the wheel here of this massive thing that is the U.S. military, and then within our unit and all that. So pretty cool.
Yeah. So were you with Terry when on the Jessica one there?
With who? Yeah, with Terry. Yeah.
Okay.
We weren't in the same team at the time, but we were in the same squadron. I don't remember exactly where. I think he was a recce guy at that point. I was not a recce guy for that one. So I was an assaulter, which was kind of cool for that one, because I was on, I think second little bird going in. So that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He told me that somebody had given y'all like a picture or something afterwards, or something. He was explaining to me that they actually were within 100 yards of the building that she was in at one point, and they didn't realize she was in this building. And I guess they like went to the next area or something. Either way, they missed her in this building. And he was like, we could have actually found her in this building had we have known she was there, because he said we were like within 100 yards of where she actually was at one point.
Yeah. Intel is important, right? doesn't matter. It's like the batter saying, man, if the ball only would have been 2 inches lower, it would have been a home run. Like, it wasn't. Like, the ball was 2 inches higher, and your bat was 2 inches too low. Like, you have to, I mean, there's been things that we've screwed up before, and other guys grabbed guys that we were going after, and I mean, it's just, intel is, I mean, it's super, super valuable. You have to have good intelligence, otherwise it's really hard to do any kind of effective operations. Yeah,
man. Well, it's I don't know, it's wild. And SEALs, I mean, it's just, y'all did some crazy stuff. I mean, some hardcore stuff, but like I said, y'all are so specialized. I mean, yours was you were corpsman, but you also went through sniper training too, didn't you?
Yeah, so the corpsman thing was my rating. So I went through corpsman A school prior to going to BUDS, and then after BUDS, I went to the dive med tech course, and then through the 18 Delta, the short course in San Antonio, and then I checked into the SEAL team. And then sniper school was just a collateral type thing. Like, you didn't really have guys that were, hey, I mean, in various platoons, you might have, okay, this guy is a dedicated sniper within this platoon, or, within the squadron or whatever. But there's a lot of guys that, that would end up going to sniper school. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that, you were talking, when you talked to Andy there, y'all shared some pretty good stories on there. Like, the one that I got a good kick out of, though, what was you were talking about, you failed one part of it where you had to like sneak and they would find you or something. Is that kind of like
Yeah. So it's I thought sniper school was I mean, outside of BUDS, I thought it was probably the hardest course that I went to. It was the NSW sniper school. And I failed the stocks my first time through. Passed all the shooting with flying colors, but The stocks, the standard is, you start maybe 1,000 to 1,200 yards away from where your target is, and your target is two guys generally sitting in the back of a pickup truck on a with a table there, and they're on binoculars the whole time, and they're looking for you, and they give you some sort of terrain feature as your left and your right flank, and they say, all right, go. And then the standard is you have to get with 200 yards plus or minus 20 yards, and then you have to make 2 shots completely undetected. And so you're shooting blanks. You have to mill them to figure out what your range is. So that's basically as long as you know if you know a measurement on them, it could be how many inches are their binoculars across, or the white fold up table that they're on, how many yards is that wide, or how many inches is that wide, depending on what formula you're doing. So you have to, if you know that, and then you can measure it within your reticle. Right, we're running Leupold Mark IV fixed 10 power scopes at the time. They had mill, very, in retrospect, very crude mill reticles in them. But we got pretty precise at doing that, and then you do some math, and it tells you what your distance in yards is. And so you have to be able to do that. All while they're trying to look for you. And then they have walkers that are walking around that are basically, they can only be walked on. They get controlled by the guys on glass, because they can see, they're walking all around. They might see where you are, but you don't have to hide from the walker. You have to hide from the guys that you're stalking against.
I got you. Yeah.
If the guys that you're stalking against, if they can walk the walker onto you, you fail.
Yeah.
So you sneak up, you do your first shot, and before you would even get close, generally my standard was about 100 yards out, so about 300 yards away, like I would turn myself into a bush. I would just start chopping down bushes and use zip ties, and I'd have tons and tons of bushes, or branches just zip tied to usually onto my bipod, and then some on my scope. So I basically created this fan that I could get behind. I put a little bit of edge on myself, but mostly I was counting on the fact that I'm going to try and shoot from within a shadow somewhere, depending on where the sun is. And then I've turned myself into a bush that they can't see through, basically. And so then you make, once you're like, I'm 200 yards plus or minus 20, you'd load your blank and you'd send around. And then they would say, all right, who, they'd hear it, and they'd come on the radio and tell the one of the walkers, hey, go within 10 yards and indicate. I think it was 10 yards or 10 feet and indicate. So basically the walkers knew where you were. They'd walk over and they'd point, they'd point an arm in the direction that you were.
Yeah.
And then you have to load and shoot another round. Actually, no, first they would go through a couple procedures. They would get even closer, and they would be like 3 feet away from you, and they're pointing at where you are. And still they can't be able to see you. And then they count down 3, 2, 1, and you have to make a shot with them looking within 3 feet of where you are. And if they see any vegetation move or anything like that, like they'll dock you a point for that. So it was a very challenging, And so when I first went through, I kind of had the attitude of, like, I have to set everything up so that my shots are going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And which caused me to choose locations that were maybe outside of the game that we were playing, which is 200 yards plus or minus 20. And so I didn't figure it out until it was already kind of too late for me. So when I went back the second time, I was like, hey, this is a game. Like, if you someone's watching you in a certain lane, like, you're never going to stalk like that. Yeah. So treat it like a game. And so I kind of changed my whole outlook on it and said, all right, if this is the game we're playing, I'm going to play it to win. And then won. So
yeah, I guess if you don't, like, it's probably weird with the walkers. I would imagine, like, with them seeing you, that's kind of got to be weird. Like, does that kind of make add any element?
You get used to it. They're just kind of, they're wandering around and you're doing your thing. They each have a job to do. And so, yeah, it was funny that the second time I went through, so when I passed, I got walked on one time, and we're out in the desert in Southern California, where we're doing this. And the guy told me afterwards, he's like, I couldn't see you at all, but there was only one bush within within the area. So you had to be behind this bush. So I was able to walk you on. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't seem fair. But at the end of the day, like, warfare is not fair. Yeah. And it's not, if there's only one bush and I picked it, like, hey, that's bad on me. That's my fault.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy, man. Yeah. That sounds super hard. Well, all right. So you were when did you get out? When did you get out of the military?
June of 2014.
Was it hard? Was it a hard decision to make, or had you felt like your time was done?
No, it was such a privilege to be a part of it. Got to do so much cool stuff, serve with so many good guys. But yeah, there was a couple of things. I mean, for one, I was just kind of done. We lots of combat deployments. Very young family at the time. I think we had 4 kiddos back then, or no, 3 or 4. So it was just the mission has changed for me. I'm completely pro guys going over there and doing the job, but just looking at it from hey, if we really want to win, like, we're not going to kill enough of them to win. As a nation, we're not really serious about doing that. So what are the things that I can have an influence on? And that's, raising my family to know and love Jesus. Like, that's where the real win comes in. And then, first off in our family, and then within our church and community, to try and do the same thing for the boys. So it wasn't a big deal to shift. But on that, like, kind of the next mission, like, one of the cool things that we're doing now is something we call father-son ministry. So as I started looking at, well, what can we do to, so many of our boys grow up without their dads, and there's this huge feminizing of our boys, and all masculinity is toxic. And so just kind of as a way to counter that, we started doing a thing out here. We just call it father-son ministry. And it started off as, we do an hour of jiu-jitsu, and then we do about a 15-20 minute Bible lesson, and then we do another hour of life skills after that. So the idea was, hey, we're going to make the stuff that we do cool enough so that even when non-believers come, and we put the gospel in the middle, so that they can't leave early or show up late and miss it. But like that's been awesome, because you get to share the gospel, and you get to do cool man stuff with these boys. And it fosters a good sense of community. And we've done everything from butchering and dressing hogs to shooting and primitive survival skills, building shelters and starting fires and going camping, and just like cool stuff like that. And then all the while teaching boys how to roll, being physical with them, and because part of our job description as men is to be able to protect our families. And while God is ultimately in control, like, we do have a responsibility to train to be as ready to go as possible.
For sure. Well, and I think that's pretty awesome, because, man, and unfortunately in the church and growing up, like, a lot of times you see women going to church, and you'll see a lot of times women without their husbands going to church. And like, as a teenager, I remember, because my dad, he didn't go to church, or does not go to church. And so, like, when I was growing up, it was kind of this, church almost had a feminine touch to it to me. And I've talked to some of my buddies that are pastors and stuff, because you even see it in, and I'm not trying to dig at some of the youth ministers, but you'll see a youth minister wearing like the skinny pants and real, like,
it's so true. Yeah.
And that's gosh, it's like, there's never the like calloused hands like, like swinging an axe kind of guy leading the youth hardly. So that's awesome to me what you're saying there. And that, like, I was thinking while you were saying that, it even had me thinking about my own church, because we're a rural town, got some farmers in there and a lot of like blue collar people. But that would be cool. Like, I was even, like I say, thinking about that with my own church. That'd be a cool thing to see start. But
Well,
yeah,
we've had, I think we've had at various times, we've had two other chapters that aren't currently meeting, and then we've got one on the East Coast that's meeting right now, that where they started doing it, and it's actually something that we're looking at maybe being a little bit more deliberate about, trying to make resources available for guys to do it nationwide, and trying to provide some training so that guys can do that, because
I think that'd be cool.
It's such a critical thing that we need. And I mean, and here's the other thing, initially I was thinking, okay, all the Bible lessons are geared towards our young boys. But now I'm like, man, this is every bit as valuable for the men. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like this little Bible study time where we get to, go through the, various aspects of the gospel. Right now, what we're talking about is just, becoming stronger Christians,
Yeah.
not by our own strength, but there is some input that we need. There's some things that we need to do. There's some disciplines that we need to either master, or at least move towards mastering, if we want to be stronger followers of Christ. And so it's just been a very cool dynamic with both the boys, seeing them grow in their faith, and then also seeing some of the men grow in their faith as well.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. Well, like I said, that's pretty cool. That's something that I'd like to see maybe do something around our area, which I've thought about, kind of on a slightly different note, but along the line with my kids, especially my son. I've thought about wanting to do, I mean, he's only 3, but when he gets, I don't know what age, 13 or whatever, I'd like to do a rite of passage kind of thing. Like, like they used to do where, maybe you take them out and let them like go camp and hunt, start a fire, do kind of like that. All right, you're transitioning into a man at this point. Like, do y'all do anything like that?
So I think it's a great concept. I think it can't just be, okay, we don't do any training, and then here we do this weekend and you're a man now. Like, I think it, as I've thought about this with my boys, I think it's one of those, you put in the hard skills, you put the reps in as they're growing up. And then I think you have multiple kind of tests as they reach different ages. Some of it might be, okay, you're going to go and you're going to spend a night in the woods by yourself. That's there's some level of fear that needs to be overcome, and then that increases to maybe, hey, you're navigating by yourself with no food for, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And, so just each one progressively getting harder and harder. And my feeling is it shouldn't be something that you should be able to do if you haven't trained for it, because then there's no, there's no, well, if anyone can do it, it's not special.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you haven't accomplished anything if anyone can do it. So we should make it something that's hard for them, that they, we prepare them for it, but there should be some skin in the game if it's something for them where they're going to look back on that and go, yeah, like, I was able to overcome this. And really, I don't think it's something that really never ends, as we, we're constantly overcoming new things. I mean, as a 44-year-old, there's stuff that I'm learning with, how to relate to people, how to deal with, with criticism, how to, work my way through different things. So it's, I think a one and done approach, I would shy away from. I think the more of the, hey, this is a continuous thing. Like, you might do one when you're 8 or 9, and then you might do one again as a 13-year-old, and then you might do one again, like, as a 15-year-old, and then maybe again, like, as right before you leave home, like, you do another one. And maybe that's one that you do, like, with your boy, like, something super cool, like go to an awesome part of the country, do a long hike together, or something along those lines. Maybe it's a hunting trip someplace cool. Like, but just doing things like that, I think is hugely important, and just being with our boys and raising them like
I
that
agree.
is huge.
Yeah, I agree. That's the stuff I kind of, like I say, look forward to as my son gets older. Like he went with me actually. He loves deer, and like I mean I'm in Tennessee, so whitetail deer is big. I do a ton of deer hunting, and I was going to take him this past year, right at the end of the season. He was still 2. He turned 3 in February, so I mean,
That's
really
great.
young. So I didn't want to like take him to sit for a super long time because he's a little kid and he'll get bored in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So it actually worked out. We don't get a lot of snow here. Typically we got a bunch this year that was like abnormal, which I guess like a ton of the country got covered in snow this year, all that global warming going on. But I love to hunt in the snow. I just never hardly get to. So this was like the coolest thing, man. I told my wife it was either the day the season closed or the day before. My son's name is Levi, and I was like, all right. I said I'm gonna take him, and I waited till like it was like an hour before dark, so we wouldn't be in there long. And I had this pop-up blind that I put up, and I took him with me, and it was snowing. It was brutally cold. I mean, I had him bundled up.
Yeah.
And we get in there, and he's having a blast. Like he's got a stick, and he's pretending that he's shooting deer. So some deer come out. I mean, I'm not even expecting. Like I was figuring a doe, and some deer come out, and I show him like, hey, there's some deer. And so he's got a stick. He's propped up. He's shooting them with a stick, and man, a pretty good buck came out and I ended up shooting it, and he got to be with me when I killed that deer, and he was like as
that's
pumped
awesome.
up. Oh, dude, it was. I mean, I've told people like I honestly think that like that buck to me was a godsend because it was like that was a moment. I mean, I've killed some pretty big deer in my life. This wasn't the biggest deer I'd ever killed. He was a nice buck, but like that's probably my fondest memory of deer hunting, just because
that's
I
pretty
shared
awesome,
that moment.
and he'll remember that.
Yeah. He was.
That's super cool.
When we got home, he was freezing cold, but he was like ready to take a picture with me with the deer, and he was grinning from ear to ear, like shivering.
Yeah.
He was so cold. But so yeah, man, I look forward to being able to, kind of teach them and show them more stuff like that. So, well, man, real quick, give us a rundown. Tell us what Amtax is before we wrap up here. Give us a rundown on what you're doing now.
So we're running 2 businesses. One is Amtax Shooting, where we provide training to basically for good Americans. Mission is to help guys to be able to protect themselves and their families better. We do that by, the initial bubble, kind of what I refer to as responsible armed citizen level guy is, being aware, number one, having that heightened awareness, being able to, safely draw a pistol from concealment and shoot. And then also being able to draw a blade, other strong hand, and be able to do work with that. Yeah. And then be able to draw under pressure and be able to draw either of those and use them, in conjunction with each other. So we'll do, we've got 5 or 6 different levels of pistol courses that we're doing now. We're doing 4 or 5 different carbine courses, everything from combative carbine, where we teach the fundamentals of carbine manipulation, but then we also teach guys to fight with it. I mean, that's kind of I've been into combatives since I was a kid, with various martial arts, but I got into grappling heavily, got into doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu heavily with Gustavo Machado back in Virginia Beach, got into doing a lot of sack collie, also when we were back at the beach. So like I'm very much into the combative side of things. So when our first carbine course, we teach how to do your strike ready, low ready presentations, do your shoulder switches, malfunction clears, mag changes, all the standard carbine stuff. But then we also teach you how to fight with it, because not every just because you have a gun in your hand doesn't mean that everyone needs to get shot. Some people might just need to get smashed in the face. Or if you can't make a decision fast enough, I mean, obviously there's some stuff going on that would lead you to have a rifle in hand. But you come around a corner and someone's in your space and you're already feeling threatened and maybe they're in your house. So if you can't ID a weapon on them, better to smash them in the face than it is to make their head explode, because ultimately you can apologize if you smash them in the face. So that's one of the other things we talk about. It's a higher level win to win with a lower level of violence. So we bring in there, fighting with a rifle, and then, okay, what if your muzzle strikes don't work? Then going into throwing elbows, transitioning to pistol or blade, doing things like that. Then we teach some precision rifle. We, shooting, medium distance out to 700-800 yards, and then long distance shooting out, 2,000 or more, depending on the tools that you have and the range that we have available to us at the time. And then I do some environmental stuff that's a little bit more, invitation only, but we do a winter course every year where guys are snowmobiling and backcountry skiing and building snow shelters, and then mixing in, some small unit tactics and some medium distance shooting with all of that, which has been kind of I really enjoy that, since I enjoy all of anything winter related, skiing, snowmobiling. I really enjoy. So that's kind of the AmTac shooting side of things. We're doing courses all over the country. amtacshooting.com is our webpage if you want to learn more about that. And then, so out of AmTac shooting kind of spawned AmTac blades, which started off as a conversation between myself and one of my buddies, that we refer to as Northman Actual. And basically, he had just learned how to make knives, and we were talking about, hey man, we all have these folders in our pockets, but like, wouldn't it be cool to have a fixed blade knife that you could have in your pocket? We joke that a folder is already halfway broken. And mostly I look at it because I have friends that make phenomenal folders. We might make folders in the future. Like we'll see. But ultimately, if it's for combatives, then you have to ask yourself, what does your draw stroke on your folder look like when you're getting pushed backwards and punched in the face? Yeah. And so if that's kind of your, how fast do you deploy it? Do you deploy it under pressure? Can you deploy it when the guy's checking your hand or doing these other things to try and counter it? So we had this conversation of kind of maybe what right would look like. And then I didn't think about it again. And a couple of weeks later, a knife showed up with a pocket sheath, version 1 of a pocket sheath. And, then I carried it and we talked, and, a few weeks later, another knife would appear. And this went on for a year, solid year. And then finally we ended up with where we had a product where I was like, man, this is really cool. And none of the guys that I am kind of in tribe with are doing pocket blades. And so I went to and asked permission to the guys that I respect in industry that, hey, are you guys good with me doing this? And you got the thumbs up across the board. And here we are a couple of years later, and the business is really taken off. We're doing 3 different models now. So we start off with a Northman, which, primarily was a pocket blade. And then guys started asking me for a belt sheath for it. And at first I was like, no, it's a pocket blade. And like enough people asked, and finally I'm like, I'm figuring this business thing out. So I was like, who am I to not sell something to you? From a business side of things, right? My family eats better if I can sell this. So I started doing that. And then the next blade we came out with was the Magnus. I really like the kind of the profile.
Let me resume this. You were talking about the Magnus.
Okay. Good to continue.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulty there, but we back rolling. Yeah. You were telling us about the Magnus blade.
So the Magnus blade is, I really like the Northman, but I wanted something bigger. I prefer a bigger blade for other strong side belt carry. So Magnus is a little bit thicker steel. It's a 5-inch blade, a little bit longer handle. And so we came out with that, and that's also been very well received. But some guys think that a 5-inch blade on your belt is excessive, or it's just too much for EDC carry. I like it, but whatever. Which is why we did the Magnus first, but then this year actually we launched it last year, but the first batch of them will be shipping next month. Is the Minuteman. So it's the handle is the same as on a Magnus, but it's got a 4-inch blade on it. Still has a little bit thicker steel. So I think that will really be the one that guys will, it's kind of that perfect compromise within a blade.
Yeah.
And then that one also you can pocket carry as well if you want something a little bit bigger for pocket carrying. So that's just been a cool, from a family perspective, it is good to be able to sell a product as well as provide a service, because
Absolutely.
if I break my leg, it's very challenging to go teach a course, but you can sell knives when you're in bed. So
Yeah.
so it's been a good addition.
No, you're good. Sorry, we had a little run of bad luck right there. Well, I was going to ask you one, I see. So you're like the Crocodile Dundee, then you like the bigger blade. He tells that one guy that's not a knife. But now the pocket sheath, is it like you actually wear it inside your pocket kind of thing? Does it kind of clip onto the pocket? How does that work?
Yeah, it just fits goes into your front pocket. I mean, this is a prototype right here of this is a Minuteman prototype in a pocket sheath. So you can see the clip extends further. So
Yeah.
when it's in your pocket, there's just this part. You can see the clip exposed, and then you can see the top, it's called the puño right here. The back part of the handle is exposed like that. So you can just reach in, very very easy to draw this out of your pocket like that. It's just a very handy, very fast thing. And I guess that's what I was getting at before we got cut off, is that as I started teaching with a Northman trainer in my pocket, I started finding all these times where your tools on your waistline are being blocked momentarily. Could be by your own clothing or could be by someone else doing something, but your pocket is free.
Yeah.
Instances they're easy for guys to envision is someone's behind you and they're going to suplex you, right? They're getting behind, they're getting that bear hug in and they're going to lift you up. Well, you got to be able to grapple to deal with that without tools, right? Or if I only have tools on my hips, I've got to drop my weight. I've got to attack his hands. I got to push my hips forward. I have to do all those things in order to create space to draw a tool on my waistline. Or I can just reach into my pocket. I mean, you should still drop your weight, do all those other things, but immediately I can reach into my pocket and deploy a blade.
Yeah.
Which is going to end up being way faster. Same thing if someone has mount on you, ground and pound. The proliferation of MMA is exponential right now. Lots of guys are learning how to do that. If all you have is tools on your hips, then if someone has mount on you, you have to bump and shrimp and create space in order to draw. Or you can just reach into your pocket and draw your blade and go right into a fatal embrace. So
yeah,
it's not, the first blade should go other strong side, because that's the biggest capability increase, is to be able to deploy a lethal tool with either hand.
Yeah.
It makes you an order of magnitude harder to deal with. But then having something, having a pocket blade on your strong side as well is I think it ups your capability 20 or 30%.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what I always carry a knife. I always have them clipped. Like, my grandfather and them would carry the old like case folding knives, but they float in your pocket. And I've got a really like a pretty case knife. It's a nice knife, but it doesn't have a clip. So I mean, it just floats in my pocket. And I carry a switchblade just because they legalized them in Tennessee. So as soon as they did, I was like, yeah, I'm getting a switchblade. So I carry a switchblade, but now I like the fixed blades. I actually got, now this was one that's a half face blade that I got right here. Now it's kind of big. It'd be a little bigger than I'd want to probably carry on me to wear like in my pocket or something. But I like that Minuteman. Is that one available? The one you just showed?
Yeah, you can order them right now. They won't ship till April.
Okay.
But yeah, they're up on our website at amtechblades.com. And that's about as big as I think you're going to be able to fit in your pocket with the pocket sheath like that. But it's still, it will do all the things you need it to do. I mean, and one of the other things that I didn't mention is that, I do a lot of backcountry stuff. I'm out in the woods. I'm, skiing and, rucking and four-wheeling and whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think as a man, you should always be able to do is start a fire. So we incorporate all of our sheaths are fire sheaths. So we have a ferro rod built in to the actual sheath.
Yeah.
So if like on this pocket sheath right here, on the top of it is a ferro rod.
Oh
So
man, that's awesome.
all you end up doing is just scraping right here against it, and without throwing sparks of steel into my computer, you can scrape it and get a fire going. So it's a pretty it's been, it fits with our lifestyle, with kind of what we're doing out here. And even if I've had some guys, well, I'm in the city, like, I don't need a ferro rod on my sheath. I'm like, well, it doesn't cost you anything to have it there.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't make it any bigger having it there. But man, if you need it and you don't have it, it could be a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see where it would cause like a reason to not, like, why would you not want a slight amount more preparation?
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, man, that's awesome, dude. And I wrote down here. Oh, actually, I made a note too. I wanted to say something that was funny that I thought of when you were talking about with Amtac shooting. First off, people do need to follow the blades, and I'm probably going to order one of the Minute, man. It looks pretty awesome. I'm kind of a gun and knife geek, I guess. But you talked about practice drawing. That was something that has been kind of funny to me to find out. Funny or sad. A lot of people never practice drawing. I was really surprised at that because out here on the farm, I built me like a little wooden silhouette type target that I can put up 2 targets at one time on, and I can shoot. And back here in the pasture, pre-COVID, I used to shoot a lot. I would just draw my pistol and shoot, and a Glock 17. I like shooting it a lot. And then I just recently got a Canik PP9 that I really like a lot, but I would draw and shoot. Well, I was talking to some guys the other day. Dude's got his carry permit and he's had it, forever, and carries. He has never practiced drawing. Like, and I was telling one of my buddies, like, I would hate to know that the one time that I would draw my gun would be when I was in like a dire situation, and I've never practiced drawing my gun, because that, to me, that lack of training and preparation, you're setting yourself up for failure. So that shocked me, man. That some people,
you have to train. I mean, it's the transition, right? It's not so much, I'd much rather have a guy that has his transitions down, right? Transitioning from hands to gun or hands to blade, being able to do that well, and he can only shoot at 5 yards. I'd much rather have that guy than a guy that can shoot, 25-yard bulls all day long, but can't draw his pistol in a fight. I mean, that's just, I mean, the more I do this, the more, to some extent, I lose patience with it, because I'm like, man, this is, if you're gonna be a wrestler, like, you have to wrestle. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, like, got to learn some arm bars, right? There's some stuff that go with that. If you're going to carry a gun, you should know how to pull it out. You should be proficient with it. You should be competent. You have to be 100% safe with it. I mean, there's so many things that, like, if this is what you do, you're just being negligent if you're not going to put the time in and actually train with it. And so, practicing your draw stroke on both pistol and blade they're vitally important.
Yeah. Well, and I like that. I think a lot of people just take for granted. They're like, they buy a gun, they get a holster, and they're like, all right, I've got a gun and I got a holster, and they'll carry it or whatever, but they just take for granted the fact that they have it. And I think that they imagine the scenario of needing it going down very cleanly. Like the bad guy's going to come in and be on the other side of the room, and they are able to know he's bad, draw, and be ready. And I would imagine when the chaos happens, it's not that clean and like that simple.
So. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to your paradigm of what you want to be ready for. I would say if guys aren't training like that, then probably they haven't put that level of effort in to even think about their paradigm a whole lot, or to explore very deeply whether or not their paradigm is flawed. Because that's how you approach it doesn't mean it's necessarily correct. My paradigm is I want to be, if you recognize the threat on the outside, and you're able to blade your body and slow draw your pistol and be standing there and trying to de-escalate the whole time, like that's ideal. But I want to train like my stuff isn't working, or like I screwed up, or maybe the guy just got a perfect ambush on me. And like this whole thing starts with me getting punched in the face and stabbed. And like, what am I doing in the midst of that? Like, how am I tapping that blade? How am I stopping him long enough to deploy my own tools? Yeah. And being able to do that in the middle of a melee. And, that's why, you have to, the whole, well, I don't need to learn how to fight because I carry a gun is just flat out wrong. Yeah. You absolutely need to know how to fight, and you need to carry a gun, and you need to be proficient at both. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that it's a higher level win if you can win with a lower level of violence. If I can punch a guy in the face and he falls down and I don't have to shoot him, man, my life is way better. His life is way better. Like it's things are way better across the board. Yeah. So it always, and the more skill we have, the easier it is to win with a lower level of violence. I mean, just think if you train all the time and some dude comes at you with a giant haymaker sucker punch, like, okay, like I see this coming a mile away. I've dealt with real punches from good guys a lot. So this is nothing to me, and I'm just going to crush you, and I don't need to go to tools. Yeah. Right. Then that's, so it's very, yeah, guys, go train. It's super important.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm gonna make a note, and I'll let everybody know. AMTAC shooting. You ever come to Tennessee?
We don't have any. I had a guy reach out to me in Tennessee a couple months ago, but we're kind of at our capacity bandwidth wise for the locations that we're going right now. Yeah. So we do on AMTAC shooting, it shows all the locations that we go to. There still are some slots available. Stuff is starting to fill up pretty fast now, but there are slots available still. Traveling with a firearm isn't a very big deal if you live in most of the country. Yeah. So yeah, I would just get out there and train.
Awesome. Well, man, everybody, y'all need to check out AMTAC shooting and AMTAC blades. And both are on Instagram. And what's I guess the handle is AMTAC blades and then AMTAC shooting. And it's just all one word on the handles, right?
Yeah. It started off from American tactical shooting instruction, and then very quickly, like guys on the shooting side, guys were just calling it AMTAC shooting. So we now have a doing business as AMTAC shooting, and then with AMTAC blades, we just started it right as AMTAC blades.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, y'all go check them out. Phil, man, it's been awesome talking to you today, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise, Logan. Thanks for having me on. Great conversation.
Absolutely. And everybody, I hope y'all have enjoyed it, and hope y'all have a blessed day.